And Solen's just finishing her dinner, and then Seven's just putting the baby to bed, so hopefully they'll join us soon as well.
Okay. What time is it by you again, Jeremy? I know I should know the math, but I figured
It's
I
I always forget it too. It's 9 p.m. here.
okay. So not horrifically late as last time.
No,
Last couple
better than the last time. Too.
Middle of the night.
Yeah. So what's up? Gary's been dry for a while. How's that been?
Like 8 hours, right? Yeah, now I'm gonna be dry for a little bit.
Okay.
Probably gonna go for a swim either way, but like whatever. No, I don't have to teach 30 hours in the pool, so it's good.
Well, that's the kind of thing about the topic of today is like when you're not in the pool, do you miss it?
Yeah.
Like
know,
you feel more at
so
home.
much of my day-to-day movement expression is done like through the water. Like just when I'm teaching, I teach so much that I'm just moving around in the water constantly. So there's this constant feedback from the water that I almost like identify with as just like a movement person. But I do dry land stuff too, so I can also identify with that.
Yeah, it seems you have the two, like you have the water persona, and then you have like rotational gait persona, that if you took the water stuff and put it on land when you didn't have the water resistance, right? It's that same concept.
Well, there's this thing with, moving your body in the way that you're meant to that mirrors the flow of water that I also, use a lot in my practice and use to inform my practice. So there's just fluidity kind of everywhere for me.
Okay. What you also do rehab as well, right?
I don't work in rehab anymore. I used to, but the practitioner I worked with, by virtue of circumstance, stopped practicing in that group setting. He just didn't have the overhead for me, and it was honestly a time that I needed to get out of rehab for my mental clarity and my mental health. Just because rehab out in these parts is a foul, disgusting entity, rather perverse. But I do things that look and feel like rehab for a lot of people. Just teaching them, why they have pain and what's the cause of it, what to do to get out of it. So it has that feel to it, but it's restorative, I guess.
I think, do all of us have that kind of working with people in pain, like, trait of our work? Like Jen, I know for sure. and I say only because, like, the media that you post you could tell it's about movement learning, right? And correction. Jeremy, do you get much of the pain stuff? I know before you chatted about someone not being ready and wanting to jump in, but
me?
No,
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot of that sort of pain education stuff, like on average. I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that humans generally don't know what their body's doing. Like we, movement professionals are in this world where, we recognize the characteristics of our body parts and our joints and movement quality and all of these other things that they don't necessarily have the vocabulary to discuss. So in that, when you have that, disrespectful, not well coordinated, not well understood orchestrator of movement, you're bound to have pain that's a result of it, just because you're driving a car that you don't know the rules to. So, people are always going to have this thing where they have pain by virtue of that, I think.
Yeah. What about you, Kat?
I definitely work with, because the hypermobiles, they're in a lot of pain.
Like, I can do all this stuff. I don't have mobility restrictions that everybody says is the cause of pain.
Yes, yeah. Pain due to different reasons, right? There's kind of what Gary was saying, the people who are sort of disembodied and they're sort of understand themselves from here up and have nothing below. These guys, it's sort of a more tissue nervous system issue. So there's a lot of different reasons for pain, right? But yeah, I definitely have right? Even out of hypermobility, post-operative, right? Recovery, athletic injuries, that type of stuff. But yeah, definitely deal with the pain, movement, rehab type of stuff. Yeah.
And this is kind of for anyone. Do we think that that sensitivity and knowledge that we're working with other people, getting them to understand their body, does that translate into our own training? Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. Finally.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Hello. Yeah, we're just kind of tapping into wondering how many of us work with people in pain. I know a lot of people will be like, that's not my thing. And I'm always like, why? Like regardless of letters next to your name, if this is the person's issue, ideally you should be able in some way to help them manage that. So we kind of went around and have been talking, do you work with people in pain? So if I were to ask Jeremy and Selene, do you guys work with people in pain?
I do work with people who have pain. Yes.
Okay. And is that separate from the pole work, or it's all the same?
It's all the same, but I usually suggest people, if they have pain during pole dance, that's not something that I want to focus on in a group class. So I just try to get them separately, like whatever the issue is,
Yeah.
to work with them in a more private setting instead of a class. But still, like if I know the person, if they're coming also my personal student, I allow them to come to class, but give them adjustments or
Right.
talk to them differently.
Yeah, class setting versus individual setting is like two different beasts, like in a big, big way. What about you, Jeremy? Pain or not
I'd
so much?
say if I'm working with adult students, yeah, but probably not as much as you guys, since I think everybody's working with adult students more than me. But when I am, yeah, and it's usually having to deal with like imbalances and past injuries and how they, can navigate that and still move. I think because a big thing about parkour that they forget is it's like about moving the way that you can move. You know what I mean? And so, even if you've had a couple injuries or something like that, that it just does not mean you can't practice parkour, but it probably means it's going to look different than, what you might see on the movies or something like that.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads in to, back when I was an athlete training for athletics, etc. I listened to Eminem and I was like going to that superhero place. And I feel like as I've aged and as I've gotten myself through injuries and issues, my training persona is normalcy. Like my training persona is not of the best and the brightest. It's not of the person that can take the most punishment. It is, I literally want to feel good.
Yeah.
Are we similar in that? Like, can anyone relate to that?
Yeah, definitely. If you have an athletic background and being on a team, you're balls to the walls. You're going as hard as you can. You're 20 years old and you're invincible, right? You want to push, but I feel the same as you. That as you get older, you're like, I'm getting it on the spike for 10 minutes and see if I can stay on a little longer, right?
Exactly. Like
that's my goal for today.
Right, making things easy. Like how easy can they be?
Yes.
Which is a different.
And just feel better or feel good or just move a little bit today and see how that feels.
Yeah. Gary, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that what I look for in my movement practice is a certain amount of ease, but it's also about like connectivity and feeling, my body, like how it's reacting to the ground, how it's reacting to stimulus. Am I carrying it all? Is there like some sort of sensation that shouldn't necessarily be there where I feel like something is going too far past like this point of equilibrium where I'm overstressing something, not utilizing my full vessel, and that aspect of it, like I'm looking for all of the relationships between, like, and I find that in that connection, while intricate, I find an ease that's not afforded to most people because it's powerful, it flows, it's connected, and it's well rooted, and that's what I look for in my practice.
Yeah, it's almost like the superhero is now internal. It's like if you like flip Superman, it's like no, Clark Kent is the dude, and he just like manages his day. He doesn't look for people to say, right? Like it's internal stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're all trying to save ourselves and one another at the same fucking time. But like,
Right.
you know, that's the notion of like all of us connecting here too. So it's, I don't know,
Yeah.
that or not.
I certainly want to get to the pole folks, pole and parkour in a second, because I think that's an entirely different realm. But I want to touch on Jen's thoughts, who again I think kind of fall into that normal E superhero as well. Is that correct? Would you say?
I would agree with that, but I'm a little different because I did not have an athletic background. So as an adult, I'm trying to learn skills, and the easiest way to learn skills is to do it efficiently.
Mhm.
And the thing that becomes really interesting about that is you start to see carryover. Like I'm doing a lot of rail balance crawling right now.
Mhm.
And the effect that it's had on my shoulders and pulling movements has been really interesting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can co-contract so much better because I've learned how to do this on a rail, you know? So that's been a really interesting exploration.
So when you say you're trying to build skills, could it be added on like this normal person can do extraordinary things if they just understand the how? They don't necessarily have to bust everything to get there.
And that's definitely how I feel about it. I mean, learning how to handstand in your 30s is very different than trying to learn how to handstand in your teens, I would assume.
Right.
You know? So you have to take a more, you have to take a methodical approach and again, find the ease and find kind of the internal work and how it all fits together, you know?
Interesting. Okay. Let me go Jeremy and then the sisters real quick, because I think for me the sister stuff is going to be mind blowing for me. But Jeremy, with you with the like the risk. Yes, you have to understand things, but you have to like have this risk factor. And you talked about fear. Is your mindset, and if you would say, do you have a training persona when you are training and looking for a trick? Are you different than when you are teaching?
No.
Could you repeat that just once, because you froze for a second?
Oh,
on the
okay.
connection.
Sorry. My question is, when you are looking at using your environment to create dynamic movements and challenging movements, and when you're trying to string them together, do you feel different when you are training than, for example, when you are teaching?
I think definitely it's different if I'm training myself, because I know myself, a lot better as far as when it comes to teaching another person. You want to get them to that place, but first is for me to understand what they can do, as well as for them to understand what they're capable of. And then that's when, safe risk assessment can be made after that. If they are on this way to knowing what they can do, then you can push them a little bit more. If you can trust them to not make an unreasonable choice, just like an example not too long ago, the thing actually you have to deal with more with young kids is making sure that they don't push themselves too hard and ninja adults. Like, okay, I got all these things. I already have like that fear built in.
Right.
After years of just living.
Right.
I had one time where a kid was doing a jump to a wall, and it looked like his ankle was flexing too much, like dorsal flexing too much in a painful way. And I asked him, and he said,
Turkish freezing.
Right. Turkey's freezing.
Oh no.
nothing about it. And then you're me finally felt good, because it's building that trust so that they feel comfortable enough to let you know without somehow ingratiating themselves to you or making themselves lower. Like, okay, I can be honest enough with you of like the things that are going on, my fear because they're 100% gonna oftentimes say like, oh, I'm not afraid of this, or I'm not afraid of this. You know, oh, this doesn't hurt, or that doesn't hurt. You get like some kids can be this way. Some adults too, males mostly in my experience. But you know, making sure you're opening up this honest feedback is, I think, the most important thing when I'm coming to teaching someone with parkour. For my own training, I'm thankfully pretty honest with myself now, but I know when I was younger, I did dumb stuff. So I'm sure it was similar when I was younger.
I think that idea of honesty is really important. So you have to kind of know when to step on their cape, right? And when to like reel them in a way.
Something I like
exactly. In a way that doesn't.
With parkour, I think it's just maybe unique to that is that there's no fudge in it. You know, like you're training somebody in a gym and you're like training them on how to move their body, how to perform movement patterns, et cetera, et cetera. But like the dynamic of parkour is you're forced to interact with the environment in a way where you can't lie about it. You can't you have to meet them on their level. And generally, if you're going to help anybody, you have to meet them on their level, because then why are they going to trust you otherwise? But with the dynamic of parkour and, you know, potentially pole as well, like there's no lying about it. You have the skill, you can accomplish the skill, or you can't.
Right. And how do you make the steps to get there? Right. Again, I consider, I mean, working with young people, if one of my kids wanted to do a jump, I would kind of be like, well, you think you can make it? Yeah. And then I'd be like, go for it. That's kind of and I haven't had, personally, I have very few students that are probably that gung-ho, but I haven't had them be wrong about their ability, right? Like it might not be as smooth or as graceful, but they do it in some way. There needs to be some kind of confidence that comes with accepting that challenge, because most kids are very against that challenge. Similar, like I have them walk on a 2x4 and no problem, but all of a sudden I raise it 6 feet off the ground and nobody wants to step up. And then it's like, well, what assurances do you need to say, do you need like a friend to be right there with you? Do you need to put mats on the ground? Like again, I keep coming to the superhero identity. Like how do we manage it so that they are able to confront their fears in a quote unquote intelligent way?
Yeah.
In general.
I mean, I think it's a little bit like the article I posted is seeing like what variables are affecting them. And the thing I think that I like most, if I say don't have that many things that I can play with, if we were taking something like balance, have them balance down low in a way that's like build them up so they can do a very difficult type of balance, maybe like on the 2x4 while spinning around or backwards, or like with their eyes closed or hopping or something like that, so that they can build up so much confidence and be like, well, I'm capable of like this level of balance on the floor, so, you know, maybe walking up at height is not going to be that bad or something like that.
Yeah, I think confidence in general, like maybe if we were all to kind of assume a position, either confident or self-trusting, to figure out a way to bridge the gap. Now the sisters, this kind of is the next for you, right? When, you know, there's the idea of, especially like hashtag Team Sexy. Like, I don't think in a million years I could ever get a sexy persona. Like, I could probably play on a pole to some way, but like I wouldn't get the boots and I wouldn't get the stockings, and, you know, like, so I'm very curious how, if it was always something in you that way to be that persona, or if it's something you had to learn, or that you learned it through teaching it.
Can I go first? No, I didn't have it in me at all until I started pole dancing, actually. That's how I met my sexy persona, so to speak, if I can call it, like the Team Sexy superhero. But I kind of grew, like we in Turkey, I think she also agrees with that. We were both, and we are sometimes, like most of the times, we are tomboys. Like we do stuff that usually quote boys do, extreme sports like riding motorcycles or doing stuff that most girls don't do. We don't put makeup on. We rarely put on nail polish or something. And we grew up like this. And when you grow up in a Turkish culture, you kind of get told by other people that you're not sexy and you cannot be sexy. Not that you, not only you're not, but you cannot, because you don't have long hair, for example. You don't wear tight clothes. You don't, I don't know, wear high heels or stuff. So this kind of, you grew up with this, like I grew up with it. And I was like, at some point was thinking, making excuses for myself for my lack of sexiness. And I was saying, you know, I'm not sexy, but I'm smart or I'm funny. So I was like working on those sort of in social situations, or like if I want to attract a male, for example, I was like, how can I do this with my wits or like funny persona? And it worked for a long time. And I wasn't having troubles with it until I realized that I was lacking a lot of sensuality. And I kind of defined sensuality not just being sexy, but being able to take pleasure in being in the moment, kind of. So I was lacking a lot of that. I'm not saying that everyone who is not like, you know, accepting a sexy persona is going to be like that, but I was lacking a lot of sensuality. And the way that I end up in a pole dance studio was also really funny. I was actually looking for a Chinese pole class. I was in Australia, and I didn't really look at the website so much. There was a lot of pink. I should have thought about it, and I didn't know what pole dance was before I went to that studio. So I ended up in the studio, and they were like wearing like 8-inch heels, thongs, and laces, and I was like this girl with sports bra and, you know, short haircut, and I was like, where am I? And then we started warming up and we started twerking all of a sudden, stuff that I could never do. I could not at that point anyway, like body rolls and everything. So I was like a little bit ashamed, but I was also so impressed that there were so many different types of women, including heavy women, very skinny women, sporty women, sensual women who were wearing leopard prints, but others who were wearing stuff like me, like sports bras and not necessarily heels and still looking sexy. Everyone had a different kind of sexy, and they were really comfortable expressing it. And I just realized, I think I want to be able to research that in myself. Like, how can I make this appear? Like, how can I go deep in myself, and how many different sexies would I have in myself if I actually searched for it?
Okay, interesting. So the
that has been my
the environment kind of brought it out to you. So that initial like, whoa, you saw everybody else doing it, and you're like, well, I might as well give it a go.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And I'm not sure if
I also paid for 10 classes, so I couldn't really get my money back.
There, right? Buy it. That's so big. And yeah, your story is similar?
Bella?
Sorry, I'm trying to mute this.
Okay, I'm working on it. Okay. Okay, neither.
I feel like it was always in me, but I blocked it as I was growing up. And the first time I started pole dancing, it was very difficult for me because I didn't want to see my body as a female figure even. So I was used to hiding it all the time. I even came with t-shirts and basketball shorts for the first months in the pole dancing, and I had to like put it all up to reach my thighs to be able to pose it and stuff. But the more I hang out there and with all of the stuffs that was happening in my life at the moment, I kind of think of it like I fell in love with myself again. And I met my female self again as the one that I buried. I'm like, oh, okay, this is me too. And it feels so much me, you know, not the whole me, but I feel like I am that person, you know. I feel like that stockings and those heels and everything that I wear is just, you know, inside me all the time. I even feel the character without the costumes now. Feels great, you know.
So
I also have a male character like that too. It comes up when I'm dancing. When I'm dancing hip hop, it just comes out of me. You know, they're both in me. They kind of bury each other from time to time, but there are some instances that they get like unlocked from their cage, and I just, you know, let them take the wheel.
yeah, so maybe part of it is revealing a side of you that then becomes a part of you. Like I think that kind of this hidden don't want to go there, but then if I do, then I have an expanded persona instead of yes and no. Like you don't have to say no to anything, and you don't have to necessarily promote yes to anything. You can more fully be, in a way.
Yeah, that connects to something to me.
I need example to understand this.
So I heard you, Gary, but so I guess when you say that, both of you said it was something that was underdeveloped in you and or something that you shied away from because it's what you didn't know. So there was like you and maybe more tomboy masculine form. But inherently you recognize that there was this other part, this more feminine form that you maybe hadn't nurtured. And then you found this culture in which to nurture it. So now you are neither tomboy or ultra sexy, but you are this fuller persona that has equal parts of both.
I would say so. I mean, I'm kind of gender fluid as well. So it's not like I feel 100% women all the time anyway. So it's like, I mean, I feel the sexy in me all the time now. It's not like, you know, I have to dig it out from somewhere. Like right. It's something that I have, I didn't bury mine. I just thought that it didn't exist. So when I was able to find it, it's like I can use it in every aspect of my life now, if I want it.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, and now I think it's like for me, I sometimes bring the tomboy out. Like I have to bring the tomboy out. It's not like, you know, it's always, I'm still always a tomboy, but occasionally like in class or sometimes I hit the team sexy button and become that. It's kind of like the opposite for me. I feel like I need to bring the tomboy out if I want it.
Okay. Gary, you had something you wanted to add?
Well, just kind of something that brought up in me while they were talking about it, just that, you know, there's always these characters or roles that we play in context of whatever it is we encounter in life. And, you know, all of the things that exist within each one of us have, it's like a little hat that you put on for a specific task. It's like the person that you are, the character that you're playing is the tool that fits the job. You know, so if the job needs some sort of sexy approach, then you pull out your best one, and maybe it's not your most well-polished tool, so it kind of like it fucks things up a tiny bit. But it's still that's the hat you wear. So we all have features of that thing in us that comes out at the appropriate time, or potentially if it's ungroomed, the inappropriate time, depending on the hat that we're talking about. But I think it's all within us, you know, and you know, with like. Seven. So then we're talking about is that they subverted it. just by virtue of their cultures. It's something that they had that they wanted to research or foster within themselves and bring to light, kind of as like part of a counterculture to where they were at in life, I guess. But it's still within. We all have it.
Yeah.
I wonder too, as we're thinking, I wonder if or how much our physical training has opened up and developed personality traits that either we honored or coveted or felt that we were lacking. So then maybe we'll kind of go around this way. So Jen, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's very true. I don't know if you've ever asked an adult who's spent the last 30 years doing office stuff to try to do an improv game. Like what comes of that is you feel for the person because they've become so rigid. Right. They don't even realize that there's this whole other side of them that can navigate the world in a more fluid way. And once they start to tap into it, it's really interesting how they'll come in 3 or 4 weeks later and say, I'm feeling just a little different. It's not necessarily physically different. There's an emotional shift as they realize there's more parts of themselves than they had originally tapped into.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I think how, physical training, however you want to phrase that, can reach parts of people's personality. I think I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, because if you look at the research on like anxiety and what the most effective ways to train someone with anxiety are, everyone wants to send them to yoga. The research on yoga is not very good. There's no conclusive evidence that yoga helps anxiety. Zero. Like the meta-analysis just aren't there. Yeah. But you send them to
anxiety. It's supposed to work.
But you put them in a balance intervention or you put them in a strength training intervention and they thrive. Their anxiety levels go down. As they get stronger and more balanced, they become more emotionally resilient.
Huh.
It's fascinating.
Kat, you're nodding a lot. What do you have to?
No, everything she had, because I've had so many people that I think much like Jen maybe they've lived in the South, right? And they're 60s and 70s now, but when I was training them, they lived in the South, never done anything physical. You get them, they come in, they might be hunched over, they kind of walk with a shuffle, you can see their persona in the way they move. You get them strong, you get them balanced, you get them stabilized. You just see, like she says, a whole personality change. And especially, how she said with the anxiety-ridden folks, I have a lot of those guys, and you get them strong, and they just feel so much different. They feel stronger, they feel happier, and a lot of times they can go down in a lot of their meds when you get them physically stronger, aerobically, and with strength as well. So it's huge personality. And then also even with the teenagers, right, with athletics, they see that a lot of kids that go into athletics, they are more confident, stronger. They usually do better on test scores because their schedule is usually more regimented. It just has so many positive effects of being physically active.
And it's almost a way of expanding the training session, right? In that this physicality wants me to tap into something mentally of some sort, and then I take that mental with me the rest of the day.
Yeah, huge.
Huh. That aspect of what we carry with us emotionally as we move or as we train, or the feelings of strength, power, control, stability, what have you. When I train people and they're not confident in carrying themselves in their own vessel, they can't hold themselves with their own body, there's something that happens to the emotional self that's directly corresponds to that feeling of I can't do this. So you get them better at anything, then there's this emotional change that happens with them. There's competency and this feeling of that I can do. And I have power and I have prowess where I didn't necessarily think I did. The fact that for some reason fitness and movement has separated emotional and physical being is absurd. And that's part of the reason why we have fucking problems with it, is because it's so disconnected that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and perhaps in the way that, you know, it's sold to us alternatively. Like, if you get this muscle up, your life's going to be amazing. So like, just focus on this muscle up, and, you know, they become really neurotic and they have a tighter hold on everything. And the thing that they needed, they weren't able to practice because they forgot that it has to come from within them. Right?
Yeah. You know, and just the adherence to, like, I don't know, there's something I've been kind of turning my head around to as far as this thing. Where like you're looking to achieve that skill or that muscle up, and something does change within you along the way. Is it aligned with your highest good? Is it aligned with what you need the most in your body? Are you disrespecting and not paying attention to other things that you should be paying attention to in the pursuit of this goal? Then maybe then that's not as ideal for you, you know, but still you got that fucking skill, I guess, right?
Yeah. And I mean, skill acquisition is excellent, but I think, and maybe Jen, you can piggyback on this, but I think, as you said, when you're so hyper-focused on one thing, you kind of neglect the rest. And when I say neglect the rest, you neglect the signals, you neglect like the wholeness of it. So how are you able to go after that thing? How can you save the baby at the same time, not let the family perish by focusing on the baby? Superhero analogy.
Well, something I think that's interesting about that is if you look at what mindful movement actually is, there's 4 components. Again, if you read through like all of the research and whatever, it's grounding, centering, breathing, listening. And the listening component is so important, and it's one that is so often neglected, you know? And listening, by that, I think of it as it be internal listening or self-reflection or a coach or a teacher asking you to listen. Mm-hmm. And I think if you can bring that aspect in, regardless of what you're working on, you learn to pick up your own internal cues.
Yeah.
Oh, I need this.
Right.
But again, that requires embodiment, which not everybody has. So
it's so like, it goes into, I think of like a superhero movie. Like, there's no superhero called The Listener, right? It would just be like in like nature, the whole, like, right. Blow shit up. Like, it's a strange concept.
That's the superhero everybody wants.
Right. You know, literally, because it's literally everyone, or it could be everyone. Jeremy, anything to add there?
I mean, I think all you guys kind of hit the nail on the head, but I first thing I started training was martial arts, and through like martial arts and parkour, just from my personal experience, I was like a super shy, but like also really angry kid because of my like upbringing, and not very confident, like pretty much for a very long time, maybe at least until I was 18, and a bit beyond that, I was like brought up to feel worthless. Even if I could create something that was good, just who I was like a piece of crap, essentially. It was just
it doesn't matter.
My upbringing and stuff. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. And so I think obviously from being proved wrong through the things I was able to achieve, and then obviously through like this listening kind of like awareness work, and realizing like, okay, you know, the thing that has been feeding these negative thoughts doesn't have to be anymore, and realizing, okay, like I can be strong and I can be smart, and these things were capable, not because of something else, but because of who I was as a person, kind of thing. And I think this is an important thing that, I mean, I heard Gary touch on as well. Like, I think all of this stuff is inside us. Like, we are strong, we're beautiful, we're, you know, smart and capable. But those things might not have been, you know, fostered in us externally or internally. And now our internal processes are continuing that vicious cycle of, you know, of our negative self-view, rather than really understanding how truly powerful and we can be. So
absolutely,
for sure.
Deb, what do you think?
What, me? I was like, what? Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, enjoying the journey. Like, we get so focused sometimes on the goal or the skill, and we're like, oh my God, I want to do this, I want to do this. And And like Jen was saying with the listening, they're listening to your body. Like maybe that's not a goal that's good for you. Maybe your shoulder's not great for that activity. Maybe your morphology, your bony alignment isn't great for X that you were trying to get. Sometimes people just get so focused on the specific skill. It's like maybe you should be trying some other skill, like, right? Like a yogi is there, they go into yoga because they're usually good at it, but maybe try a different skill that maybe you wouldn't be great at, and that would teach you even more, right?
Yeah.
The yogis should probably do a little bit more weightlifting. The weightlifters, powerlifters should probably do a little bit more yoga, right?
Contrast. Absolutely.
But then also just not getting so focused on some specific skill. So many people, it's Instagram happy world we live in, and it's like people are like, I must do X, Y, or Z. Sometimes it's like maybe either pick a easier skill or just enjoy the journey of maybe trying to get to the skill, and maybe you'll get to a different skill along the way, and not, maybe you won't hit the goal that you had, but just enjoying and listening to your body and saying, oh, what was that? Oh, okay, that's how my body works. So
Sydney, did you want to add anything?
Me?
Yeah.
I was now thinking, just thinking from what all of you guys said about like listening, as Jen said, like listening to your body. And I've always been a person who listens to the coach very well. You know, whatever my sister says or whoever the teacher is at that point, I am going to question what is being said, but I will do it, you know. And if I trust the teacher, if he says do it again, I will do it again or work on this. I am very good at listening as a learning environment. What I am not capable of doing yet is to actually get it in my own life, to listen to my own body. Like if I get hungry sometimes, I don't notice it. If I get tired, I don't even know. I think like I can go for hours more, and usually this gets me in a lot of physical trouble. And I'm thinking like, how am I at the teaching learning environment this good at listening, and in the other section of my life this bad? Like what is not syncing there and there? Like what is the bridge to put them in together? And I just thought of what Andre was saying, how he said, don't train in your life, because his life is a training. Like he wakes up and starts, you know, to train. Everything he does, he doesn't just do it to live or to train. It's all combined in a way. So it just hits me, you know. I'm just thinking right now. It's an interesting connection. I would like to make them come together.
Yeah, and that actually leads me to, I think, both you and Kat in this group. Like when you are a parent, does the identity and persona of a parent like just come in and swash everything else away? How do you integrate that when you realize listening to yourself is really the answer, right? And now you're responsible for this thing and you almost have to listen to them more. Like how does that fit in to the persona?
My sister has to go to my niece, so I think you are supposed to answer this.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Like she had to go deal with a child. Earlier, my kid came in, right? Asked a question, and she's dealing with it's interesting to see the evolution of having to deal with the small babies. That was for myself physically very, very, very difficult. I need a lot of sleep. I need a lot of rest for my body, and that doesn't equate with small children. So I found it, but then again, like the physical activity was the thing that sort of saved me. I would go out and walk with them in the stroller, and that was how I knew that being active and doing the exercise was the thing that was going to save me in terms of my mental health. Because it's a little punishing when they're young. When they're older, it's getting different now. Like I can sit on the bike trainer here, and they can be I have a pull-up bar and a TRX, and they can be swinging on that. And so then it's just, we're all being physically active. We're just create obstacle courses. And so it's definitely a lot easier now that they're content. So.
And if you were to, like, the first word that describes you, Catherine, if you were to describe yourself in one word, or maybe a couple words, is mom the number one? Like, is that like, I'm Catherine, I'm a mom? Or?
No, I don't think, because if people people from my high school were like, whoa, you're a mom? Whoa, that's kind of crazy. Because a lot of people that knew me from a long time ago, I didn't think I was going to have kids for a long time. So it's definitely, that's probably not my first. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm a mom, but it's not my identifying thing at all, right? Like, I do it. It's a thing that I do, and I have children, but it's definitely not mine. I
found myself in this situation where I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I'm always just stunned by even the concept that I'm responsible for this thing
for the rest of their lives. Like, yeah. I mean, that's what I understand. Everyone's like, oh, 18, they leave the nest. Like, every parent I talk to, they're like, no, your 40-year-old will still call you on the phone and be like, oh my God, mom, like that. Like, it's for the rest of your life. It's definitely, but yeah, I mean, I think it's good that a lot of the people that their children are their identity, and like they put everything, and I see parents who do it. It's like their goal on the field is their goal on the field. It's like, no, that's your kid. That's not you.
Yeah.
So don't live through your child. Separate, and they have their life, and I'm doing I'm doing the mom thing, and then you have to fly the nest, and I hope you're a good, decent human being. I mean, that's
right.
That's my job. But people who their whole world is their children, I think once they leave the nest, like, they don't know who their partner is. They don't know who they are. Like, that is just, I don't think it's mentally healthy.
Yeah, that's interesting too. As I think of my parents for a moment, it's like when we were in the house, there was everything you could possibly need and want. And then now that nobody's in the house, there's like nothing in the house. It's like, what do you guys eat? And what do you, like, it's just like tumbleweeds. So it's interesting how
not anymore.
What might be a nice closer, and we'll kind of go around the loop again, is if we were to kind of piggyback with this superhero concept or persona, kind of describe your superhero that training has brought to you in a few words. So give you kind of a moment. So what is this balanced, super, better than before persona that your training has brought to you? So I'll give you a moment, but Jen, you'll be up first whenever you think you're ready.
Confidence and ease. I was a very uptight person, and definitely, like, learning to tap into efficiency has been very good for me.
Or is that okay?
Yeah, I see this kind of you, so I'll just kind of go down from Jen and.
Gotcha. My superpower, I think, would be that what training afforded me was the opportunity and the ability to uncover the true nature of others and uncover it for them, and then guide them through that process of actually finding out this part of them that existed, that they didn't realize it. And I didn't necessarily have that before the training context. I had like the teacher thing where I was helping them do things in the world, but the thing that training has given me is this ability to show people a bit more of who they actually are.
And that came from you knowing yourself first?
Just figuring it out in the process, finding it for myself and then helping others find it too.
Okay. Catherine?
Piggybacking off that, I liked that one with that Gary had, because it's the same, right? Like when I was younger, similar to Jeremy, my childhood not so great. So I succeeded in physical activity and in running and being strong. So that was the main thing that gave me confidence and joy. And so then being able to then pass that on and be like, dude, if you can get strong, if you can tap into your body, and you can also teaching people to also get strength and confidence and change their mental attitude. It can just like and also getting people out of pain and teaching them about pain. Like getting people out of pain is a super, that's definite, or getting them to enable them to be able to give them agency to get out of that state of pain is pretty awesome. It's very cool.
Awesome. Jeremy?
I think if I had to pick, I guess something that I felt from training I tried to get an affinity for, and something that I aim to pass on, is the ability to create. You know, you can have something in your mind, whether it is a long-term project, or if it's a single move, or if it's, you know, in parkour, a sequence of moves, or if it's just, you know, a concept, and be able to take this thing that exists only in your mind and then create it in the real world. I think that's a really great tool it was really great for my self-empowerment, and it's something that I really like to pass on to others, because I know I really don't. I feel like one of the problems with the world a lot of times is like, you know, public education and stuff is just creating like cogs in the machine rather than conscious caring creators. And I think the more we can show them that exists inside them, and they can create anything that they really want, doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's possible. I think that's kind of what my goal and my mission is if I was a superhero.
Helen?
I think my training gave me the superpower of not being afraid. Through my training, I am not afraid to go for what I want. I am not afraid to try things, and I am not just afraid to see myself succeed. I think this is the superhero that it made me.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. If I were to say for myself, it would be to feel. And it's interesting because I relate a lot to Catherine in that, like, growing up, I was hyper competitive, and it was how much could you take? I would do what everybody else was not willing to do, and it was so simple to me. But that persona forced me to not be blunt. Knowing that I was super sensitive in so many ways, like I didn't find how that would be good for the world or good for myself, because all it did was open me up to hurt. But, you know, after a major injury and after like life shifts, I realized that that's where everything is at. Like, it is your ability to feel. It is your ability to give and sense and adjust. So, yeah, to feel would have to be my defining factor, and it's been awesome.
Yeah. Cool.
We're just about at an hour.
I have another question.
Oh yeah.
What should our superhero team name would be? Justice League is different, but you know what else?
Oh man. Gosh, let's think of that.
To relate, I don't know.
The relators.
The relators, and there'll be like realtors that are like, you can't take that. Yeah.
I think it's going to have to be Chris and the listeners.
Chris and the listeners.
Like a terrible band
I
name.
like the listeners. I really like it, actually.
Yeah, I think maybe the listeners might be a form of potency. We'll have to start.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, you think the success that all of us have had is from listening to clients and figuring out what they need and what's going to make them succeed. So
Yeah, and I don't forget listening to ourselves, because that's what we ultimately are trying to get people to do as well. So the listeners, that's going to be the title of this video recording.
There we
That's
go.
awesome.
Woohoo. Our logo should be an ear, you know.
Yes, with some fanciful wanted adjustment to it, but awesome start.
Very good start. Yeah.
All right, the listeners. Thank you for your time as always. Are many of you going to be tomorrow at 3?
I'm not going to be tomorrow at 3. Life comes up. But yeah, so not
Super,
gonna be
okay.
there.
I just have to check the time. Okay.
question mark. There
Okay.
might be the kid thing, the mom thing.
Again, completely understandable, the whole listening. It's 3 p.m. Tomorrow, Jeremy, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard.
Real quick, hold on. Let me get what the time is for you now so I can set my second time on my watch to okay, 1 second. So what time is it for you guys right now?
Right now, it's 11 a.m. Pacific Standard on the dot.
Okay, sweet. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I think that'll be a bit late again for us, but
11 a.m.?
It's 11 a.m. Yes, Pacific Standard.
Oh.
We're far away.
yeah.
Yes, other side.
Like, oh, nice for you, I guess.
I can't even calculate this.
Okay, there we go.
Me neither.
So it's 11 a.m. I mean, I'll check, but I think so. I've had 3, so it's 4 hours from now, right? It'd be 4 hours from now tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 2 in the morning.
2 a.m.?
2 in the morning.
I don't know. I'm on very heavy medication. I
It's-
have no idea if I can be up at 2 a.m.
And super, I just was giving a heads up. I think Brandon should be able to join us too, but just a heads up.
I can try.
It should be interesting, value in crossroads, but something to keep in the radar for January. Something I'm very interested in is the idea of privilege in movement culture is something that I want to try to tackle for January. So, which will be it's something I don't think enough people talk about. So, heads up for that. Happy holidays, everyone. Enjoy your time
Merry
off.
Christmas, people.
Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. And I always enjoy chatting with you guys. So talk to you soon.
Good to see you all.
Likewise.
Bye.
See you.